Hi, my name is Jess Ridgway, and the title of my action inquiry project is Hands-on Learning in a Hands-Off World. For my student teaching experience, I was placed at Sonoma Elementary School, which is part of Harper Creek School District in Battle Creek. I had the pleasure of joining Miss Kane in her class of 18 amazing second grade students. Thankfully, we were able to be in person 5 days a week with a half day on Wednesdays. When I first started in January, the students were just coming back from virtual, so they were very excited to be back in the classroom. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the students came back to a classroom that was adjusted so they could learn safely during the pandemic. This meant that they could no longer meet at the carpet and that they would have to be learning at their desks 6 feet apart from one another. As I started to learn the student's name and become more comfortable in the classroom, I began to ask myself how I could make an impact in these students' learning. What are they missing out on that I could find a way to implement? My mentor teacher, Mrs. Kane, was very open and shared with me activities and opportunities that the students were missing out on. In a normal year, students would have had the opportunity to socialize between other classes and grade levels during their lunch and recess time, but instead they ate lunch in their own classrooms. COVID-19 also limited their time outside of the classroom, like traveling to the cafeteria for lunch or Chicago for a class field trip. And most impactful for elementary students was the removal of hands-on learning opportunities. Unless every student had their own individual materials, they could not be used in the classroom. New objects had to be set out before students could touch them and had to be able to be sanitized afterwards. So I started to think about what I could do to bring hands-on learning back into an environment where you're telling students to keep their hands off of everything, especially when children who are 8 years old are not that great about keeping things out of their mouths. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how I could create opportunities to use hands-on learning while also keeping the students safe. I created a list of guidelines that would ensure hands-on learning could occur safely during a pandemic. What I found is that every opportunity that involved hands-on learning had to be one-on-one so that each child got their own materials. I also had to make sure that what I was bringing into the classroom was able to sit out for at least 48 hours. This meant preparing 18 different set of materials 2 days before I would teach each lesson. Using these guidelines, I began to develop lessons that brought hands-on learning back into the classroom. For my first hands-on lesson, I had the students form landforms using Play-Doh. 2 days before I taught my lesson, I had my roommate help me cut and bag up 18 balls of Play-Doh for each student. This took about an hour to make sure every student received an equal amount of Play-Doh and that they were individually packaged and sealed. In a normal year, it would have been easy to bring in the Play-Doh the morning before and hand them out to each student before the lesson, but this is not a normal year. I took extra time and effort in order to give the kids that same experience. But once I told the students that they will be working with Play-Doh, they were so excited. Seeing how excited they were to use manipulatives made me want to work harder to provide even more opportunities for hands-on learning activities for them. The longer I spent in the classroom, the more I began to realize what subjects the students were struggling with. Unsurprisingly, the students were not excited about math, so I wanted to find a way to integrate hands-on lessons in order to get the students excited about a less appealing subject. In order to do this, I created a math lesson for the students' measurement unit. In this lesson, the students created their own measurement monsters with pre-cut out arms, legs, and bodies. The week before I taught my lesson, I spent every night cutting out body parts, head shapes, and arms and legs for the lesson. Each student had their own choice of arms, legs, and bodies and had their own set of markers to draw on their monsters. In a normal year, the students would have been able to choose from a pile of options, but COVID-19 restrictions say that they are not allowed to share materials. By spending extra time cutting out body parts for each student, I was able to implement a hands-on activity that would not have otherwise been possible. The kids loved this lesson, and all the extra time and work it took to prepare was all worth it to see their engagement and excitement about creating their measurement monsters. Through using hands-on learning, I was able to see a change in the students' interest during the lesson. Even though they don't particularly like doing math, they were still excited to express their creativity while also working on their measurement skills. After these two lessons, I was excited to continue to implement these techniques. After the students created landforms using Play-Doh, they asked me when they would be able to create models again. So I of course started to think about ways I could implement Play-Doh into the classroom. I decided to use the landform lesson as a scaffold and build on the ideas that we discussed in that lesson. I accomplished this by teaching the students about different bodies of water on Earth. Just like they did with the landform lesson, I allowed the students to create different bodies of water using Play-Doh to help model the features. Again, the students absolutely loved this lesson. They saw the bag of Play-Doh sitting out and they asked me when they would get the chance to build more things. They could hardly wait. I chose to give the students two different colors so that they could mix them and use the difference in hues to add details. They were engaged for the entire lesson and were so excited to share their creations with the rest of the class. For this lesson, I spent about 2 hours putting Play-Doh and labeling bags for the students to enjoy them for about 45 minutes. This shows how much preparation it takes to simulate the same activity during a time of COVID. While no one expected to live through COVID-19, I am so glad that I was able to complete my student teaching in person. Even though we met some unexpected challenges, I am very thankful to come into school every day and see my students. After implementing hands-on activities in the classroom, I noticed that student engagement went up. They were excited when I told them I had a new lesson for them because they knew it would include something hands-on and fun. They started to look forward to my lessons, and that made them more excited and motivated to learn. I found that the students who were more hyperactive were able to use these lessons as an outlet for their energy. Instead of becoming frustrated or uninterested, the new lessons sparked their interest and broke the routine of what they expected learning to look like at school. Another change for the student this year was their loss of their music and art combined special. This meant that they were no longer getting music and art lessons. These hands-on activities allow the students to express their creativity in a structured way and help to supplement for the skills that they were missing out on. In conclusion, I am so thankful for the opportunity to work with such an amazing staff and even more amazing students. I'm excited to take the experiences and techniques that I used during my student teaching into the classroom of my own in the short future. I have learned that no matter what, you should be an advocate for your students. It is important to advocate for their learning and challenge yourself to provide the best quality of education that you can. At times, I would struggle to stay up late proportioning out Play-Doh, but seeing the excitement on the students' face inspired me to work even harder to cross the challenging barriers of COVID for them. I wanted to thank the entire Sonoma staff as well as my fantastic mentor teacher, Mrs. Kane. I also want to thank the Albion College Education Department, specifically Sue Ellen Hankey and Karen Hoagland, for their continued support throughout my student teaching. And finally, I want to thank you, viewer, for watching my Action Inquiry project. I look forward to answering any questions you may have about my project or my student teaching experience. Thank you.